You're listening to Built to Convert, the podcast where growth-minded marketers, founders, and creators come to level up. No hype, no guesswork, just bold insights that drive results. Let's go.
Welcome to Built to Convert, the podcast where we explore how strategy, analytics, and creativity come together to drive meaningful growth. I'm your host, Tyler Lane, founder of Session Interactive, and on each episode, we sit down with marketers, founders, and operators who are building real momentum inside today's most interesting companies. This episode is brought to you by Session Interactive, the performance marketing agency for brands that are serious about SEO, GEO, paid search, analytics. If your internal team needs extra horsepower or your strategy could use sharper insights, we help brands from B2B to B2C to DTC drive measurable revenue with less guesswork. Learn more at sessioninteractive.com. All right, we've got an interesting guest focusing in on some progressive technologies, which we're all talking about, which will be fun. Ken McLoud, founder of Laconic Tech, a company focused on helping businesses operationalize AI to drive both revenue and efficiency. Ken is deep in the weeds building real-world AI systems, from lead generation engines to agent-driven data analysis that allows teams to interact with their businesses like they have a full-time data engineer on staff. Ken, great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Fellow East Coaster too. Come on, it's important. We got to shout that out. And when I say East Coast, I mean Northeast. Like, let's be clear, right? Ken, we like to start off every episode with just kind of a little bit of a overview of who you are, how you came about. I know, you have a really robust engineering degree. Talk to me about a little bit about that, and then really what you've been fixating on as it relates to Laconic Tech.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer by training. I spent most of my career working a 9-to-5 W-2 job. And in 2019, I started side hustling doing custom kind of back office web apps for small businesses. Mm-hmm. That was going really well. In 2023, when ChatGPT dropped, we started incorporating more AI features into those apps as they were becoming available. And that started going really well. Then I had survived 3 rounds of layoffs at the day job. And just about the time I was thinking, gee, maybe I ought to take this full time, the 4th round of layoffs got me and made the decision for me. So I went full time, and it's been nothing but up and to the right since then. So it turns out that that was the best thing that happened in my career. Yeah,
I love that, Ken. It's such a good story too. It just kind of forces you into like, I've got some revenue coming in. Let's double down and expand upon that. I've got a similar story too. I didn't get I didn't get laid off. I got fired. So, but similar kind of where there's a will, there's a way. Ken, there's a lot of buzz. Obviously, we've been talking about it for years now around the AI component and experts, quote unquote, in the space. Right? It's still so new that we're all learning from a fire hose. But let's talk about you're not just talking about AI and like, what does that mean? But you're building real systems around it. Walk me through kind of some systems that you gravitate towards building, and kind of some of your philosophy as it relates to onboarding a new client who's got an idea.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a huge one. You've probably seen the statistic, and this was I think it was a Harvard Business Review study, that over 90% of the AI projects funded by corporate America didn't show an ROI.
Yep.
And it's exactly because that they're missing this part that you're talking about. They've got the solution in hand, which is AI, and then they go looking for a problem for it. You hear stuff like, we've got to do more with AI all the time. And I've unfortunately been involved with a few of these. This is exactly the wrong way to be thinking about it. What we instead want to do is think a little more like a business consultant and less like an AI tech guy. And we want to identify what the real constraints are of the business that's preventing us from hitting our goals, whether that's growth or profitability or both. And then look at this new set of tools we have available to us with AI that we probably didn't have available to us 6 months or a year ago, the last time we were thinking about this problem, and go, how can we attack that critical business problem with these new technologies? And that produces way better ROIs, much more successful projects than going the other way around and just looking at your business and going, where can I use AI?
I know. Yeah. How can you like force it in when you're taking a little more of a strategic approach with this? I think that's the classic thing. Like we need to use it, but do you? Have you found places? I'm curious too, where hey, we don't really need to necessarily use AI here, or there's other applications, but you can consider using it or not.
I've got a project going right now for a property management company out of New York City.
Nice.
They originally came to me with as an AI project. And once we got through their requirements, it's like, this actually doesn't need to touch an LLM. We can just write old school code to get this done for a way lower operational cost than paying for a whole bunch of tokens to send it through an LLM. So yeah, there's plenty of times where either it's something like that, and like we actually don't need to use AI to do that. Or the other thing that happens a lot is like, well, when we think this through, is that actually going to be a good idea? Like, one, are you going to show a positive ROI from that project? Or two, the other thing that happens is a lot of people tend to want to put AI between them and their customers, right? I want AI doing cold outreach. I want AI answering the phones, this kind of stuff. And this is super risky because especially if you've got any kind of high ticket sale, you're not selling ice cream cones, you're doing some kind of B2B large sale.
Sure.
If that thing's just a little bit worse than your human sales guy, all of a sudden it's really expensive. If it's converting a handful of percent fewer than the human was, now that's going to be negative, not positive.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just wild to experience. And I think we've all experienced it of some way, shape, or form. I just had my truck serviced, and they reached out with their AI bot to schedule it. And I think I went through maybe, I'm not exaggerating, maybe 8 to 10 back and forths until the actual dealership called me and said, like, sorry, we're having a lot of trouble with this. And I was like,
the one that gets me, so for administrative stuff like that, I don't really mind talking to an AI versus a human. I don't need a human connection to schedule the oil change.
Totally. Yeah.
The one that gets me, because it feels like it's insulting my intelligence, is when a very obviously AI is pretending to be a human.
Yes, you're right.
You hear like the fake clickety clacky on the keyboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Goes, hi, my name's Cheryl.
That's wild. Just like, the psychological association. It's like, let's be honest.
But if it just identifies itself as the AI that's here to schedule the oil change appointment, at least for me, that doesn't bother me.
Ken, let's talk about kind of some of the more recent projects you've worked on. Would you guys say you're vertical agnostic right now? And then based on maybe a vertical that you want to prioritize, potentially, what are some common projects or items that you're fixated on? Lead generation, I know you mentioned in the past. Unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so in terms of verticals, it is fairly diverse. The two biggest concentrations are in marketing agencies. I think a lot because marketing agencies tend to be kind of tech forward and forward thinking, a little bit more cutting edge than a lot of more brick and mortar kind of businesses. And then the other concentration is sort of all the way the other way. It's on stuff like manufacturing and logistics. I'll say a lot of kind of companies with dirt under their fingernails, in particular where they've got founders who are kind of younger and tech forward themselves, but obviously within that company, they don't have development capabilities, if it's a manufacturing operation typically. So there's a lot of opportunity there in order to build out customized tools specifically for their operation. Then in terms of what sort of projects we're tackling, I tend to group them into 3 categories. The first one is lead gen. So it's this idea of AI powered lead magnets, essentially. Like everyone's familiar with we'll hand out a PDF with the top 10 tips on XYZ. But basically AI lets us personalize that lead magnet to the lead in potentially really valuable ways, right? So we can do things like scan their website, scan their ads library, ask them a multiple choice or a fill in the blank questionnaire. And then we can tailor our lead magnet PDF specifically to their use case rather than just a generic lead magnet.
Yeah, nice.
The second category is kind of workflows that in the past have been difficult to automate with traditional code because it doesn't break down into a nice, clean, if this, then that, right? Mm-hmm. It's more sort of fuzzy logic.
Some nuance.
So there we can obviously capture this usually in what's essentially an SOP document, like you'd hand to a human, and then set up an agent to go execute that workflow. Mm-hmm. So that's usually more on the cost saving side. We're reducing labor, letting people tackle more volume without having to grow the team size is typically how that shakes out, rather than wholesale replacing people. Because you're typically automating particular workflows rather than entire job roles.
Exactly.
So there's still roles left there for the humans. We're just enabling this amount of humans to be able to cover way more work.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the third category centers around AI-powered data analysts. So these are agentic systems that we'll set up where we give the AI a little sandbox to play in where it can write and execute code. And then we will give it data connections out to business data systems, right? So this might be a database for a manufacturer with all of their manufacturing and ordering information in it. It might be on paid ads, say ad performance or SEO traffic, this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can give you the ability to effectively have a data analyst to pour through all that data for you, produce reports, answer your questions without you having to go out and hire the data analyst, because the data analyst is Claude or Gemini or whichever model we're using underneath.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I love that. It's funny to just, that particular example, like the data analyst piece brings up a couple of things for me in particular, right? So we've got systems built out like that as well. But I think what we've found is that we do need to still have our practitioners be immersed in the data. And I think summarizing and analyzing data is really helpful. But if we're put on the spot by a client and we can't understand like how the agent came up with that, right? That's a huge issue, right? Absolutely. So I think those are the type of things within product requirement docs and persona markdown files and trained up skills. Obviously, I'm referencing Claude a lot that help curb that, but are not a perfect solution necessarily.
Yeah. No, and like a super common pattern that we're building out here, and skills are like the way to attack this.
No doubt.
Now they're being adopted industry-wide outside of just Anthropic. Like Anthropic wrote the original spec, but that's very quickly becoming an industry-wide standard. So those skills can be portable. For something like data analysis, once you have something that's running on the regular, we know we frequently want to look at this particular metric.
Sure.
We don't want the AI kind of coming up with its own way to do that every time we ask for metric XYZ. Instead, the right way to engineer these systems is to write typically a Python script, just because it's a nice, friendly programming language to use here. That calls the database and generates your answer on metric XYZ. And then you're using the skill to tell your agent, call that Python script when you need to get metric XYZ. And now it's repeatable. Every time you get metric XYZ, it was calculated the same way because old school code did the calculation. And you don't have to worry. Now you can know how that metric got calculated every time because it's right there in the code.
It's right there. Yeah.
And even if you've got somebody who doesn't understand the code, guess who's great at explaining what the code does?
Totally. What do you say to people that think there's all these efficiencies to be gained and gleaned from AI? And what I've found, I was talking with, shout out to Chuck Akins, who's obviously associated with Natalie and Volume 9, who you know as well. We were talking about just that word efficiency and how it's misused lately. It's you're looking for efficiencies potentially, but you're actually adding more work to your plate because you're able to be efficient maybe here, and then your output is increasing significantly. Do you find that people are do you find that true, right? In terms of some of your engagements, and how are people adapted, or how have you adapted to some of that?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things here. Like it's way better to think of these systems as superpowering your team. Like I was talking about earlier, allowing the existing team to do way more volume than they could have done before, rather than wholesale replacing job roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, because it's just not really there. We're not wholesale replacing most any job role.
Exactly.
But we can make them able to do a lot more volume with the set number of people. The other thing that comes in there is we almost always need a kind of human level manager oversight on this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like everybody gets a lot of YouTube videos where the person's like, oh, these idiots are still running their business. I just sit by the pool and my AI makes me $3 million.
It's so bad. Yep.
And like, it's not happening.
No,
that is not actually what's going on. What's happening more is kind of everybody's becoming more like a high performance manager, and you're managing these AI workflows, making sure they're still staying in the guardrails and doing what we need them to be doing.
Yeah, I love that. Spot on, and really kind of educated from your, compiled from your experience thus far. What are your experience when you're talking with companies? Are you finding that most companies are kind of dabbling in AI usage, or are you finding more and more companies that have like a structured program around it and lack some of the knowledge and expertise that you bring? What's the mixture you see right now?
Yeah, man, it's really the whole gamut. Right? Yeah. So obviously these sorts of people aren't coming to me, but I meet people who are like adamantly opposed to AI and just don't want, largely for philosophical reasons, or because they have some like very outdated notion about what it's capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing, that they kind of haven't updated that notion in a few years. So you've got that's the one end, people who are like adamant, I'm not using this in my business, all the way to people trying to make that YouTube video we were just joking about reality. Right. And then everything in between. I think kind of the sweet spot for people that I work with are where the founder or the owner, the CEO is really excited about this stuff. They're probably using a lot in their personal life, but their business isn't technical enough that they've got a development team building out the tools and the workflows to make all this work. So that's where we can come in and kind of provide that outside development team in order to make the vision a reality. Totally.
It reminds me too of just with a lot of industries, but SEO in particular, where there's always a ton of blog content that got out there, and now it's a lot mostly video content, still blog content, of course, but of like, and people will form opinions without actually experimenting. And I think that's a big thing with all these pundits that we've seen for the last year plus of just automate this, or why I went from position 30 to 1 overnight with this particular keyword based on my bots. And it's just like, it's bullshit. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great example. Yeah. I think you mentioned something like this when we were talking before we started recording, but the amount of certainty some of these pundits have on what's the right and the incorrect way to do it is just wild to me.
It is.
Right?
It's insane.
Like when the OpenClaw thing exploded in late January here, there was like, you had people giving definitive statements that it must be done this way. You can't ever do it that way. And it's got to be like this. It's like, this package like came into existence a month ago and has been popular for 2 weeks. Like, how can you possibly know this?
So it's wild. It's a lot of things are changing, but some of those foundational items are not. Let's give me an example here. Let's say I'm a B2B SaaS company, Ken. Where should AI sit in the funnel today? I mean, I think SaaS is interesting, right? And talk about pundits. SaaS is dead, all this stuff. I was talking with some connections recently. They're high up in hospitality organizations of SaaS companies, and they're getting pressure from their PE companies, things like that around SaaS. And it's just wild too, Ken, before you answer the question of just, again, people attending conferences or watching a video and they buy into the hype very quickly. But I guess back to my question is like, where does AI sit right now? Top of funnel, middle funnel, post sale, all the above? I know it's a broad question.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the acquisition side of, let's assume like a higher ticket B2B sale, where we sit now in early 2026, I certainly would not be trying to set up a voice AI bot in order to be my closer on a B2B sale. Like, I think you're just piling up money and lighting it on fire. But higher up the funnel can be perfect, right? So the kind of lead magnets we're talking about earlier, we could do something like have a questionnaire to ask the lead a few things about their business, and then we could develop a customized PDF exactly to them. Maybe we even scan their website, grab their logo, grab some more information about their business, and we can provide this report that provides some value on whatever problem we're solving with our SaaS and points out how we could help. And then you're just handing that out for free in order to generate more sales conversations with your humans.
Yeah. Nice.
And then, like we were talking with the data analyst stuff, obviously the SaaS world is huge into data, and a lot of these people already have their own data teams. But if maybe you're a smaller operation that doesn't have an expert human nerd to go digging into your data and analytics, we can now set up one of these agentic systems, wire it up to your data sources, and you can be asking questions about like which lead channel is actually the most profitable.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's really insightful stuff. And I'm glad you're prioritizing that with your current clients, obviously. Let's switch gears a little bit, just in fixating on tools. Everyone's always obsessed with talking about the individual tools. Are you bullish on a particular LLM? Are you agnostic? And then, answer that. And then let's talk about kind of where at least we're really prioritizing. We'd like to think we're agnostic, but we're really building out and have been for a while is Claude, in our Claude platform specifically.
Yeah. So I'm I got to be careful because I could talk about this for like the rest of the day. So I'm pretty adamant that especially when we're building out a significant system, we should try to avoid vendor lock-in wherever we can, right? Because the ability to hop from one provider to another, like OpenRouter allows you to do, is just like super valuable.
Yeah, I agree.
For a couple of reasons. One, because we find a lot of times individual tasks within a workflow will trade off. We'll run it on Grok, we'll run it on Gemini, we'll run it on GPT, we'll run it on Claude. And a lot of times you'll find one of those for this particular task. It's just like got the knack and it's better at it. Yeah, so if we build this whole system for the LLMs to be interchangeable Lego blocks along the way, right? At any time we can pop that Lego block off and pop another one in. Granted, it makes the build harder, but it's super valuable because we can have this flexibility. And then if 3 months from now, Gemini 3.5 comes out and it's just the hottest thing ever and is the best at this thing we're doing, it's super easy to just pop out that Lego brick, pop in the hot new LLM, and we're off to the races. But that doesn't mean that I don't think there's a clear winner right now, and I'm on the same page with you. Yeah. Right now, especially for these business tasks, right? Stuff like analytics and following workflows, Anthropic's just cleaning house right now. There's for that kind of stuff, they are solidly winning right now. But I want to emphasize, I don't think by any means that means they're going to be winning a year from now or 6 months from now. So I'm still trying as hard as I can to avoid vendor lock-in everywhere and make these things interchangeable Lego bricks, make all those big AI shops compete against each other for our business.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's kind of what we're leaning into, is trying to just, which LLM is the best for this, right? Obviously the stuff that Gemini is doing around images and videos is pretty wild. But you're right. No,
that's go ahead. The one case where I think somebody's got a leg up on Claude is exactly what you just mentioned there. So I work with some manufacturers, And we have systems where we can feed an engineering drawing to Gemini, and then Gemini can answer like shockingly technical questions about that engineering drawing from taking the image of the drawing. And like I've tried that exact use case with all of the other major providers, and everyone else just falls on their face.
I love just
whenever we're doing anything with ingesting visuals, I go straight to Gemini.
Smart. Yeah. And I think just, and I think that's also too is where we lack of just let's educate, let's go through a prompt process and test right across LLMs. That's why I like, creation of the terminal and being able to switch back and forth within Claude Code and other components, which has been super cool. Talk to me, Ken, where do you think there's a lot of over-reliance happening right now? I mean, we've got kids, and I'm curious your thoughts on, we'll put some existential questions out here in terms of just how we're digesting information. I mean, I found in certain cases, I'm like, wow, I could have just written that myself. Why did I have to strategize with an LLM or, make this quick formatting? Instead, I ran it through a prompt, right? Yeah. Is there a bit of over-reliance on some tasks have you seen? And then are people getting smarter, you think? Or in certain cases, is it becoming a disservice for them?
Yeah. So I think the Rorschach test here, the very first thing that popped into mind when you said that was content creation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. So I think that it is certainly possible to make high value content with AI. I've seen it done. I've been involved with projects doing that. But I think that there's a lot of slop out there, right? There's a lot of people did not carefully orchestrate a system to actually be making good content. And instead they're just getting the bland corporate robot M dashes and emojis, posting all your social media posts. And like, I don't think this is actually helpful. Like you said, you're going to be much less effective, and you're still wasting a reasonable amount of time on it.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out to Brittany Mueller, who's doing a ton of stuff in the AI space. And I remember her talking about content generation being one of the worst use cases for LLMs. And I think that's evolved, obviously. But
yeah, I think you can make good content. Yes. But it takes a lot of effort.
Correct.
And anywhere where we're making what I would call good content, there's still a human in the loop at a couple places in the workflow.
Absolutely.
Right. Both steering the initial direction and then also in that kind of QC phase there. So a lot going back to my earlier example of giving humans superpowers, where this is successful is we'll take an article writer and they used to be able to make 3 articles a day, and now they can make 10 articles a day.
Totally.
It's not that we fired all the article writers and now ChatGPT just spits out articles all day.
Exactly.
Because there are certainly people doing that, and it's typically not very good.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, I gave a talk about this last year about the sea of sameness, and it wasn't exactly my idea, but it's just what's happening is that people, think that they're junior copywriters or senior copywriters for that matter, based on a couple of prompts. And that's just not how it goes. We've tested it significantly, despite what I hear from some of my other agency colleagues too, of like, oh, it beats out human writers. And I was just like, I don't agree with that.
Certainly not out of the box.
Subject matter expertise, things like that. There's ways to utilize AI to get that. But it's a lot through still human involvement to interview and to get that nuance.
Copywriting is a great example because I've had some experience with this. And this is a good, like, kind of overall LLM lesson. Let's take our B2B SaaS company we were just talking about in the last theoretical example.
Sure. Yeah.
If you just open yourself up ChatGPT and you go, I'm a B2B SaaS company in the hospitality industry, write me my intro copy for my landing page, my H1, H2, and top paragraph, let's say. It's going to be trash. Like, it's going to sound like the most generic corporate robot speak. But if you spend a lot of time, right, if we start by researching some of the best web copywriters let's say, or maybe even historical pre-rev copywriters, building up best practices, giving it a dozen examples of websites that we think are really well copied and written.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a lot more work than just asking ChatGPT to write your website. And then we go, okay, now give me 5 potential examples from my H1, H2 based on all that we just established.
Mm-hmm.
And then you read through them and it's like, number 3 is not bad. I might have to change a word or two, but we could roll with number 3. But to your point, if you compared that workflow I just described to an actual like pro copywriter, the workflow I just described probably takes longer. Almost certainly.
Yes, exactly. That's
I guess the unlock here is if you don't have a pro copywriter on hand, then now we've got this interesting new option.
New shiny thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Where do you find that companies are making the biggest kind of mistakes as it relates to AI right now? Ken, my example would be something that we did a number of years ago. It was like, when ChatGPT first came out, getting licenses, and it was like just letting people test and start ideating themselves. But I think, we quickly found without like a prompt process, establishing context, assigning the role, defining the task, having interview you, those type of things, without adopting at least some basics around that, our output was terrible. And I think that created a lot of initial judgment from people like, oh, this isn't great. And it's like, well, let's look at your prompt. And then I think also just not being able to fully customize and personalize and develop an actual foundation, which is something obviously we're doing and have been doing for a while with Claude. But curious what you're seeing on your end.
No, I think the stuff you're seeing is all great examples and totally true. I think the biggest like stub in your toe problem that I see is the stuff we were talking about earlier about being a solution in search of a problem. Right. Mm-hmm. So like I think you mentioned
great point.
Like SaaS businesses getting pressure from the VC guys that, hey, you've got to do more AI. You've got to do AI. We've got to use more AI here. And that happens a lot. Like you have business leaders coming into the room and being like, what are we doing with AI? We need to be doing more AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, I got a hammer so every problem looks like a nail.
Exactly.
Thinking like leads to significant investment in projects that don't actually show good ROI.
Yeah.
Because that problem we're trying to solve, was actually taking 20 minutes a month of somebody's time.
Mm.
So like, even if it went to 0, which it's probably not going to, like, oh, great, now you've got a 6-year ROI on that project. Good job.
Yeah. It's the shiny thing in the corner. We have to implement it, Ken. Come on.
Yeah.
Ken, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I appreciate your insights. I'm really excited to see your business continue to thrive and where you're headed. Where can people find you, whether it's online, and where can they find out more details about your business as well?
Yep. Best place is my website is laconictech.com. That's LACONICTECH.com. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn under Ken McLoud.
Awesome. Well, we'll be following along and definitely have some additional questions for you. Ken, appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to Built to Convert. If you're serious about growth, don't just listen. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for new episodes that drop straight into your feed. Until next time, keep building.